Hello everyone and welcome back to this episode of the GeekWave, and in this video we are talking about Christopher Nolan and his films because he's got a little movie coming out, supposedly coming out this weekend, depending on where you are in the world, called Tenet. And yes, I'm calling it Tenet, I'm not calling it Tenet, I'm calling it Tenet because that's just how I keep seeing it and how I keep hearing it heard because I watched Mr. Sunday movies. So that's why I'm calling it that. That's how we're sticking with that. Couple of things up top. We are on Twitter and we got a new title for you. It is I was going to call it a hashtag. You can find this channel on Twitter at Ride the GeekWave. That's what you could look up. You can find us there. A lot of cool stuff. My Stargirl post made a lot of splashes, surprisingly. So that's where we're at. Yeah, Tenet, Christopher Nolan, we're talking about it. This is the first GeekWave not to be on camera for one reason and one reason alone. I forgot to charge my camera battery, so I couldn't put up the camera and film it in the time I had to record. So you're just going to be hearing the audio. That's fine. Put this on while you're cooking, while you're cleaning, while you're doing whatever you're doing. Just sit back, relax, and let's talk Christopher Nolan movies. But before we get into Christopher Nolan, we always start the show talking about some news. And we have a lot to talk about because we had a couple of things happen, like DC Fandom. So if you guys are looking to see any of the Fandom news, I did an entire GeekWave episode dedicated to all the reveals from DC Fandom. That came out, I think, on Monday or Sunday. I can't remember. You could check that out. Really good stuff. A lot of great reveals. If you aren't really interested in watching the full video, I get it. So I'll just give you a little tidbits of stuff I really liked. John Cena's Peacemaker, fantastic. The Batman trailer, fantastic. That Harley Quinn bit they did where Harley Quinn's telling people to jerk off instead of getting a relationship. Fantastic. I wish we got a season 3 announcement, but that'll probably be coming September 12th when they do the TV and comic book stuff. So let's jump into the news for this week, and we'll start off by talking about The Last Airbender, which is a show I have not seen all of. I don't know if I've said that before on this channel, but I've not seen all of The Last Airbender, and I know there's that Netflix show coming out. I was probably going to jump on board to watch that, but the original creators of The Last Airbender cartoon are no longer attached to work on that Netflix series. They're leaving for creative differences, which always is a bad sign. You guys know that is just terrible to hear, especially from a show that is so beloved like this. It's actually very concerning. You know, this series, it needs a win so bad so the fans won't lose their minds at this live action adaptation. This is not the way to do that. I mean, you're going to lose so many fans and so many people's interest because the guys that made the cartoon great aren't going to be there to make this show great either. So I think this is going to affect a lot of people. Will it be as bad as the Shyamalan mix-up, whatever that was? I don't think so, but I also don't imagine this is going to be very good. I hope for the best. I think there's a lot of potential for the show to be good in live action. I really hope they cast the characters according to the region that the show is set in, and we don't get whitewashed, because if we get whitewashed, it's going to upset a lot of people. I don't think we will, but they better not make like Aang white, or just like one of the leads white, because I think it's going to make a lot of people upset, and I don't want to see that. So we'll probably talk more about The Last Airbender once that show comes into fruition and see what's up there. I'm very disappointed in this news, but it is what it is. I can't really do anything about it. And our next tidbit here is about Seth Macfarlane, and we did a whole video talking about this career of Seth Macfarlane, one of my favorite GeekWaves. I still think it's our highest viewed GeekWave. I absolutely love that episode. He is adapting The Winds of War for NBC, and this is such an interesting choice, you know? This is like his first outing at NBC, and it's going to be a drama series. I mean, we know the guy likes his like history and his drama and is talking about that kind of stuff, but I was very intrigued by what he put on the table here. It must have been like, hey, Seth, can you make us a Family Guy? Can you make us an Orville? He's like, sure, of course, but I want to make The Winds of War and show people that I can do serious stuff. I bet you something like that was in the conversation. I'm actually very curious to see how this is going to look. I know Seth can make anything look good. The guy is a talent, and I really do enjoy him. So my hopes are very high on this project. I think it's going to be really interesting to see, and I can't wait to just experience what Seth's going to bring to us, because the guy knows how to make television. Regardless of your feelings of him as a person or any of his programming, the guy understands the television format, and I'm very excited to see what this could be adapted and how it's going to look. It's going to be like a war drama. Very excited. That's going to be really cool. Very happy that Seth is doing this. Another piece of news here I thought was very interesting. Jenson Ackles has been cast as Soldier Boy for the 3rd season of The Boys. We still do not even have the 2nd season of The Boys, and we already got this announcement. That's how much faith that Amazon has in this project, and it's for good reason. The show's incredible. We will be doing weekly reviews of The Boys, don't you worry. I heard rumblings that it's going to be coming out weekly, so if it is, we'll be doing weekly reviews of The Boys. If not, you could expect a full-on spoiler, probably an hour-long review talking about the season of The Boys, because the show is fantastic. Jenson Ackles is a good actor that I've been waiting for him to get out of that supernatural CW bubble and break into something bigger. I think having him, this guy who we've seen portrayed this cool, suave dude who everyone respects and loves, kind of taking a step back and playing like a really piss-poor Captain America ripoff. Great idea. Aspired casting, in my opinion. I think that is fantastic. I'm very excited to see how this is going to look. I think we got, Giancarlo Esposito coming into Season 2. Jeffrey Dean Morgan's been rumored for Season 3. This cast is getting better and better, and I love it so much. I'm so excited for Season 2. This show, I think... I don't know if I've said this or not, but I really do not like the comic book that is The Boys, but I love what this show has done, and it's just taken just the basic idea of the Justice League are terrible people. We have a group of individuals with special gunfighting skills that could take them down, and it did something completely great with that. That's why I think whatever they're doing on this show is going to work really well, so I'm very curious to see what's going to come next from The Boys, and Jenson Ackles is a great addition. And guys, we do got a trailer to talk about too. Death of the Nile. Or is it Death on the Nile? Death of the Nile? I don't know. I put of in my notes now. I don't think if it's going to be Death of the Nile or Death on the Nile. Look, it's a bunch of sexy people in a boat with Kenneth Branagh. Like Armie Hammer, Letitia Wright, Gal Gadot. A bunch of the sexiest people working in Hollywood today. So hell yeah, that's great. I'm excited for that. I like looking at sexy people on boats having a good time in a period piece. Looks really fun, very interesting, very curious to see how that's going to go. I mean, I kind of liked Murder on the Orient Express. Not my favorite just because I always think that ending is just so piss poor, but it is what it is. Very curious to see how that's going to go. And here's some interesting news I didn't want to hear at all. So CW, known for adapting things like, did they do Sabrina? I don't even remember anymore, but Riverdale, Nancy Drew. They're doing Powerpuff Girls next. And the Powerpuff Girls are going to be teenagers who resent their father for giving them powers. Why? Who wanted this project to be made? Who asked for this? Who's the motherfucker that pitched this and was like, yeah, we'll stick the Powerpuff Girls. This guy's doing a line of cocaine. He's like, oh, the Powerpuff Girls, they hate that they have powers because, every teenager... They would never abuse their power. That's not the teenager spirit, man. They're just going to be so resentful that they're so strong and can fly, like every teenager would be. Why is this being made? I really hate it so much. It's such a bad idea. And I'm just like, what? How do you even do this? Why would you even want to do this? Who's the motherfucker that said, let's get the Powerpuff Girls over Johnny Bravo? You could totally make a live-action Johnny Bravo, and it would be so good. But this is dumb. This is dumb. And our last piece of news here, Olivia Wilde is in talks to direct a Sony Spider-Man movie. As it stands, the current likely candidate is it's going to be Spider-Woman. That's a really cool idea. I think Olivia Wilde is a fantastic director, and I'm super excited to see what she could do with a genre property. Booksmart was incredible. A lot of people don't give that film the credit it deserves, and I think just having her come back into the forefront in a genre piece, fantastic idea. I love her a lot, and I've said it on Twitter. You guys can check it out at the GeekWave. I mean, at Ride the GeekWave. I always forget I changed it to at Ride the GeekWave. She would be pretty good Jessica Drew. I think she has the right look, the right energy. She's got the right maturity level. She'd be a pretty good Jessica Drew. Just saying, guys. So maybe Sony, get her to do that. That could be pretty impressive. So that is all the news we have this week. Of course, you guys, we are going to be jumping right into our main topic. So we're going to take a quick break. You guys can go grab that sandwich or whatever it is you're doing. And we'll come back and we are going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's films. So I will be the first person to say that I'm not a huge fan of Nolan's. I know that's weird to say. I'm like that film school douche who doesn't like the popular guy. But I think more often than not, he had some incredible films. And, not all of them have stayed with me or moved me in the ways that some of the other directors have. Like, I don't put Nolan in my top 10 directors. I think if you're going, like, of all time, he might make the top 10. Personally, he's not in my top 10, though. So I just want to point that out there to you guys and just say that. He is better than most, and I appreciate what he does, but he's just not my guy. He's never been my guy where I'm like, I cannot, like, wait to experience a Nolan film. I always thought he's just a guy. I was like, yeah, I love his movies, so I'll watch him, but I was never, like, first in line to see Inception or any of that stuff, That was never me. But he's one of those guys, too, who just loves cinema. And that makes me so happy. Because some of the best directors out there are the guys that love watching movies as much as making them. I really like that energy. And he's one of those guys that is always looking for a way to push the boundaries of film. And, the way he makes sets or the way he develops his ideas and moves the camera and does all that stuff, too. I think it's very important and very cool stuff. The guy loves cameras. He loves just finding new ways to use a camera and certain angles to use. Big supporter and big benefactor when it comes to using the IMAX cameras. So I love that and I respect the hell out of him for doing that kind of stuff. Very cool guy. I mean, he loves cinema and he's willing to try new things to push the genre forward of filmmaking. So in that regard, you have to like the guy because he's that important and he did a lot of great stuff that way. I really do appreciate him for that. And I think more than anything, he is an idea man. He can take a concept that is simple as losing your memory, having a dream, entering a black hole, and he could turn it into something breathtaking that no one's ever experienced. I think the concept sometimes is better than the execution. And that's why I'm like, this is going to be a very interesting conversation because I know there's a lot of people who support Nolan a lot, but I'll tell you right now, I don't love all his films. I don't. I think there's some that I don't really enjoy. So let's jump into it. I would like to start off by saying there are 2 films of his that I haven't seen. Those would be The Following and Insomnia. Look, I'm sure they're great, and I'm sure there's the audience for them, but they're in the earlier parts of his career, so I don't think it's like the ones everyone's going to want to talk about. If you like them, that's great. I haven't seen them, so I'm not going to comment on them or pretend like I have seen them. So let's start with the film of 2000, and that is Memento. In my honest opinion, guys, this is still my favorite of his films. The story is very simple, and it's one of those stories that I think every aspiring filmmaker should start with. You don't jump into your big idea until you know how to make a movie. And I think Nolan is a great example of that because he's got big ideas and great genre pieces and some really interesting, breathtaking visuals and stuff, but he starts out with a story like this, a man with short-term memory loss who's searching for the killer of his wife. I mean, that's a beautiful premise. I love that premise. But what really makes this work is how the story is told. And that's why Nolan's kind of a genius. He just took this simple idea that he had, but he also was like, no, we're going to tell it in a very unique way. Okay, we're going to start from the ending of the film, and we're going to work our way to the beginning of the film. So it's like a loop. You're starting here, you got to get here, but we're not going in the linear fashion that a lot of filmmakers do. We're going to do it my own way. Like, seriously, the whole story is told from the end to the beginning, and it still manages to flow properly. Like, there's nothing about it that feels off or out of place. That is amazing. That's the sign of a guy who can make a movie, when you can just take a concept like, we're literally changing the laws of filmmaking. We're telling a story that starts with the ending, and it's going to be every couple of seconds, you're going to go back a little bit further, and you're going to see, oh, this is how that happened in the previous scene before here. Here's how it flows. That's brilliant. That's the sign of a true filmmaker. And even in an early adaptation, and even early on in a career like that, just seeing how a guy can do that kind of story, that's how you know a guy's a brilliant writer and a fantastic filmmaker. I love this movie. I think it's one of his best. It's my favorite of his. I will say that right now, which is like, it's weird to start saying that the first movie we're talking about is my favorite. I just feel like that's a little awkward, but it is. Memento is my favorite of his films, and it's fantastic. Guy Pearce steals every scene he's in. He really makes the film work too, just the way that character acts, the way he's able to understand what that character needed to be. Fantastic stuff. Very compelling. Very enjoyable too. So I liked that a lot. Very good stuff. Then comes 2005, and we're going to go into Batman Begins, the first of Nolan's trilogy of films. I want to start by saying this. It's not the best Batman film. But for a time, just for like a small time, it was the most realistic portrayal of the character. And it was probably the best portrayal of the character. This vision is incredibly realistic. It shows us how a lunatic billionaire would become a vigilante in the real world. It feels very real world. Every gadget, every villain, every character, they're not these over-the-top comic book counterparts that we saw in the Schumacher era or the Burton era or the Adam West era. This is like, we're taking the basic idea of these characters. Here's Gordon, here's Alfred, here's Bruce, here's the Scarecrow, here's all these characters you know, and here's how they would be if they were outside in like New York City today. This is how they would act. I think that's really good. I love the origin. I think it's a really well done. Is it the first film to take us overseas to see Bruce Wayne training with the League of Assassins or the League of Shadows? I can't remember. I'm trying to think if any previous movie showed us Bruce Wayne actually training with like Ra's al Ghul and all those guys. I can't remember if there was. Something about this movie I just want to bring up too that I always found to be bad was Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul. I don't think it works. I understand what you're trying to do, but Ra's should be this foreign powerhouse that's scary and maniacal. Liam Neeson was just Liam Neeson. I understand why you did that because Neeson's going to sell seats more than some other people would, but I would love to see a Ra's al Ghul who is just straight from that like European kind of area that's very I don't know how to describe it. I can't think where was Nanda Parbat, where was that supposed to be located? Like Tibet or something? I can't remember. I would love to see that kind of looking Ra's, and I hope we get that eventually at some point. It could be really fun. But it's for the most part, it works where people aren't going to be offended. And I think at the time being, most people were okay with it because they're like, oh, it's just rage. It doesn't matter. Christian Bale's great. He really understands what Bruce Wayne needed to be. There's a snarky energy to his Bruce Wayne that was very important. I think the voice was a really inspired choice that could have gone bad, but as much as of a meme it is now, it works. Like, nobody's ever talked shit about that. It's just kind of like, oh, you're doing this gravelly voice. Fine, whatever. It's not bad. It's okay. His Batman suit, pretty good. It's a good origin movie. I really think it's a good origin movie. It's probably the best origin movie for Batman on film because it kind of takes the idea of the parents dying and does something different with it. It's not just like, oh, here are the pearls dropping and that's how we know he becomes Batman. It's kind of like, yeah, but he also falls into a cave and he learns to keep himself together because his parents died and how that kind of changes him in a different way from just seeing the parents die. I think that's very cool. Very enjoyable. And Michael Caine as Alfred, perfect. Like that is such a great idea. I'm super impressed with it. I love it a lot, actually. And then we come to 2006, which brings us to The Prestige. Now, when I first saw The Prestige, I didn't think that much of it. I think I was like early on in my high school, maybe like 15 or 16 when I watched it. And I thought it was kind of basic. But back then, I was that. I mean, of course I was, because I always liked being different than the other people when it came to the things I liked. So if somebody's like, oh, I like this classic blonde-looking woman, I think she's pretty. I'm like, oh, I like the dark gothic chick, I think she's better, and that kind of stuff. So everyone was like, oh man, The Prestige is so good. Christopher Nolan's such a filmmaker. I'm like, yeah, I know he's good, but I can quote The Seventh Seal in its native language, and even though I'm not French, I can tell you exactly what's happening in that scene when they're playing chess. And I'm like, I was just such an asshole about film back then. I just thought it was something weird. So I always thought The Prestige was kind of basic. But the older I got and the more I watched the film and I recalled the ideas that it presented to me, it actually started to really speak to me in a way I wasn't expecting. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, they play opposing magicians in the 1800s, and they're both trying to find the next big act. I love the obsession that drives both of these men. Or is it the three men, Is it the one, the two, or the three men? There's something I find fascinating about the obsessive side of people. like the passions that drive them. In this film, you have it in spades. Like the cast is great. As always, you got some of the best guys working in Hollywood coming onto this film, including director, writer, like everyone was so good when it came to this. And this has become the thing with Nolan. He knows how to make a good cast and how to make these people work good for him and good with him. Like you can look at any movie Nolan has made before or after. You can't tell me that anybody was wrongly cast or anybody was out of place there, because everybody was in the right place for what the movie needed to be, for what the character needed to be, and it worked really well. Very enjoyable stuff. I really enjoy what he does with his cast. Fantastic. David Bowie was also great to see. I love David Bowie. And I know there are multiple theories and ideas about how the film works or what was real or what was fake, but that is another element I think Nolan really likes to take and just like delve into, is this idea like, he wants you to leave the theater with a sounding idea that I still need to think about what's happening, so I have to go back and watch the film. And that's a really great idea when you're a filmmaker. You want people to think about your film in these different ways. And I think you really start to get that when you watch this one. You're like, oh, so when did the scenes happen here that made the plot go forward that way? When did the machine actually work? Did we actually get a twin? Was there clones? How many people started dying? When did the act truly fall down and break into this world into like a interesting way? How was there so many bodies coming about? There's something really compelling about that. I very much enjoy it, and it's the mystery of it all. That's what he was trying to present in this film, and that's something that comes into a lot of his work after this. Then we come to 2008, and holy cow, what a year this one was. So in 2008 we get The Dark Knight, and how do we even begin talking about this one? I think at some point we will dedicate an entire episode of the GeekWave to The Dark Knight. I'm not sure when that will be, but we'll have to wait and see. It's the best Batman movie. Like it actually is the best Batman movie. I don't care what anybody says. This is the best Batman movie. The idea of what Batman needs to do in this world is fantastic. How Gotham gets darker because of him. The ideas about good versus evil, about anarchy, and Heath fucking Ledger, man. I cannot express how visceral and frightening his performance as the Joker was. This man felt like a real-life lunatic, and that is something that I don't think any other Joker has really captured. If you want to do something in the real world, which is what Batman Begins did, then you go into this, where you have the most colorful and like insane comic book villain ever, and you manage to make him feel like he's part of the real world. That is a feat unknown to most. I love a lot of the Jokers we saw, even though I hate the character. But there's something about Heath that is unparalleled, and you just gotta be okay with that. He was so unhinged, just the way he portrayed himself, that I'm willing to bet it's one of the factors that cost him his life, because he was so inept and just so into that character. You can't come out of that dark place once you get in there. And I don't want to say it was something that drove him that place, but it wouldn't surprise me if we found out that it was what happened to him. And Harvey Dent, oh my God, you wanted to talk about a character who I think was portrayed perfect too? Harvey Dent was so perfect in this movie. Okay, Two-Face is my favorite villain in all of Batman's mythology, and I love the character of Harvey Dent, because the character and the journey and the story of Harvey Dent, everything surrounding the character of Harvey Dent, is the story of Gotham City. Harvey starts as the city's hero. He's the shining face, the bright white knight. Everybody loves him. But because of what the city is and how it's taking a toll, and because of Batman, he is slowly beaten down and broken by Gotham City. As soon as Harvey breaks, so does Gotham City. Those two parallels of the idea that Harvey is the best thing happening in Gotham. But as soon as he turns, as soon as the city breaks him down to its level, Gotham goes with it. Like that parallel, I love it so much. And his transition to becoming Two-Face in this film is fantastic. It's so real, so understanding. I love it a lot. And I also really like how his arc ends in this movie too, you know? It shows he could never be the man he needed himself to be. Like he had to become this version of himself that the city needed, that the world needed, but he couldn't do it. he had to remain who he was in the end. And I think that's brilliant and fantastic. And I love Two-Face. I want a really fantastic Harvey Dent to appear in the Batman and set up that we're going to get a really maniacal Two-Face somewhere down the line. I hope we get that at some point. I'd love to see it. This film, The Dark Knight, it's a perfect film. Like, I think there's few comic book movies that are perfect. The Dark Knight is one of them. It's a fucking fantastic film. And then comes 2010 and we get Inception, which, is this his greatest film? Is this Nolan's greatest film? I think it might be. I think if you look at some directors, you look at somebody like Spielberg, you're like, oh, Saving Private Ryan's his best film. You look at somebody like Tarantino, you're like, Inglourious Basterds is his best film. You look at Nolan, I think you would say Inception's his best film. It perhaps the one time his concept was on par with the execution. The obsession of dreams and what do they mean and how can you control them and what are in dreams that are real or what is fake. That's a concept rarely explored in films. And again, a stellar cast. And I will say it here, this is some of the best on-screen work from Ellen Page. This is where I fell in love with that girl and realized there's actual talent here and not just like the young, vibrant energy that we've seen from her. This movie showed how creative Nolan could get. Like, just the idea of what he could take, moving the cameras in certain angles, the way he builds the world around it and showing how you destroy it. The man loves his practical sets, and it really shows. A lot of the scenes in this film, if you guys weren't aware of this, they're practical effects. Like the way we're blowing up a cafe, the way a lot of things are happening, there's a lot of practical effects in here, and it's so surprising because there's just something so intense and real about the way this movie works. You're like, wow, this is insane. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And just like The Prestige, this is another case of the open-ended ending to allow the audience to think about the greater meaning. I think compared to Prestige 2, this one is just clearly like, what really happened here? You are leaving the theater, you're leaving your experience of this movie, you're seeing the spinning top, you know for a fact it's not Cobb's totem, it's his wife's totem. And you're just left like, did he ever truly escape the dream, or is he still stuck there in kind of his own purgatory, his own version of life? Like, well, how can he escape this? And I'll give you my opinion on that right now. See, the thing about doing these is like, oh, we're doing like 4 minutes for each movie. And a train just passed by. I don't really get to like go in depth about everything. It's just kind of like an overall view of my thoughts on the movie. But I'll tell you this about Inception. I know it's an open-ended ending, but in my opinion, Cobb did manage to make it to the real world. If that's what Nolan's trying to tell us, I don't know. But if you want my honest opinion, Cobb did get a happy ending. I think that's just what I think. I think it's really cool. I also don't think Nolan will ever be able to top Inception. I don't know how Tenet's going to do, but I don't think he'll be able to top it. Just in terms of quality and the way everything worked together so perfectly, it's a hard film to top, even from the same creator. I don't know how it's going to go. I'm very curious to see what it's going to be like. It's just a mixed mash of ideas that formed the perfect storm when it comes to filmmaking, and that's something we can applaud Nolan for. Then comes 2012, and we get the conclusion to Nolan's Batman trilogy, and this one is The Dark Knight Rises. Aside from Anne Hathaway fully bringing Selena Kyle to life, I don't think there's a lot of substance to this one. It feels as if Nolan was like, I'm done with the property. I'm ready to move on to the next thing. I'm going to make the movie. We're going to not talk about it again. It's over. I don't have any more obligations to Warner Brothers to work on these properties. So I'm out of here. I'm done. And I don't know, this one, it's really got me thinking, because this was like the time when Man of Steel was coming out right away, right? Man of Steel came out the next year after The Dark Knight Rises ends. Could you imagine how Christopher Nolan's Superman movie could have looked if he was ever put in charge of making a Superman movie? Christopher Nolan's Superman could break the bank. That would be so fucking awesome. I would love to see what he could do with that, but we'll never see it now because he's never going to work on a property like this ever again. And we can get used to that. We'll live with it. We're fine with it. It is what it is. It is what it is. He did a really weird Bane. I really don't like Tom Hardy as Bane. Again, it's one of those things with like Ra's al Ghul where it's like you have an idea, but Bane's a character of color. Not sure if you were aware of that there, Nolan, but Bane's a character of color, and using a white actor for a non-white role, I think is really weird. And he didn't even look like Bane. He didn't act like Bane. There's a lot of really weird ideas in this movie that I thoroughly disliked. And then we come to 2014, and this is where my dislike of Nolan really starts to take off, with Interstellar. So here's a fun little side story. In college, I was taking this, it was kind of like a digital media course where it's all about like radio and the technology and cameras and all that. And one of the classes we had to do was we had to have a debate class, and we would team up with one person in the class and we'd debate each other about a topic. Me and the person I teamed up with, we couldn't think of a topic. So I asked them, like, what is your favorite movie of all time? And they're like, oh, it's Interstellar. I'm like, okay, that's great. I hate that movie. So let's talk about it. Let's debate why you like it and why I don't like it. I want to debate on why I did not like this film. If I still had the notes from that like debate, that what I made, I would probably copy them here and just tell you about them, but I'll just go off the top of my head here again. This is Nolan trying to be Kubrick. This is him like, I loved 2001, which is also a movie I can't fucking stand, but this is Nolan like, I can do the Stanley Kubrick thing and do the hardcore science fiction. It really shows he's trying to be Stanley Kubrick here, and it's really annoying. I don't enjoy how smart the film thinks it is with all the accurate scientific facts that ultimately back away in the end, and it just becomes about the fifth dimension, about love, and how like love's the most powerful thing in the universe. If you're spending all this time trying to tell me the facts about black holes and like orbiting this Earth and orbiting a black hole and how like time dilation shifts and all that stuff, and then you come to this bullshit conclusion that you can enter a different dimension and be in the past time because love conquers all, you are a douchebag, and I don't respect what that could be or what that would look like. I really hate that idea, and I don't enjoy that part of it. I mean, the scope of this film is unparalleled. As much as I don't enjoy it, he really has made anything that looks like it. Everything looks so stunning and vibrant. Every shot has a certain pristine to it that you could look even at Inception or The Prestige. There's nothing like this movie in Interstellar, just the way he took the scope of everything he made before, and he's like, we're doing a science fiction film. It's going to be science fiction-y. You're going to watch science fiction films, and you're going to enjoy them, or you're not, and we'll move past it. It's not bad. And I said this at the beginning of the episode too. Nolan is an idea man. He can take a concept, and sometimes that concept does not live up to the execution. This is, I think, the most egregious case of that, where the idea of time dilation because of a black hole and how the Earth's dying and we have to like rebuild the planet. This is an idea that does not live up to the movie. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I really don't like 2001: A Space Odyssey. So if you try to mimic that movie in certain ways, I'm going to like your movie even less. That's just what I think. I wrote here in my notes, like, Nolan really likes his open-ended endings. I guess that's a good way to make sure your audience is still thinking about your movie. So, good for you, man. That's fantastic. I love it. Then we come to 2017 with Dunkirk, and I thoroughly enjoyed Dunkirk. I thought it was an all-right movie. It's one of those war films I can come back to and still like revel in the marvel of what's going on. I don't normally talk about the color grading on a film just because I don't think the audience cares that much about the color grading, but I think it's important for this film since in each different area of the combat, whether it's like on land, on sea, in the air, it looks completely different in this unique, vibrant way while it's still having a certain flow that tells you this is the same movie, we're not changing anything, everything here is real and genuine. Like, the cinematography, too, is just gorgeous in this movie, and the acting feels so real and heart-wrenching at times. There's so much about Dunkirk I really enjoy. There's a lot to like about this one, and I think it's one of, or if not the only movie Nolan's done that's slightly inspired by true events. I think that's cool, and that's fine. I don't know if we're supposed to like overthink if it's like truly accurate or not. We're just supposed to like, this is Nolan doing a war film. Here's like some aerial combat, here's some sea combat or naval combat, I guess. Well, it's not really naval because they're on a boat, so I guess that's not really naval, right? There's some combat on land. Here's a fantastic cast of young actors that will come up and do some really great stuff later. It's really cool. It's a really cool and fun movie, and I think a lot of people will enjoy this one. I know I did. I really do enjoy Dunkirk. I mean, maybe we could do a video talking about my favorite war movies. I'm trying to think of like some war movies that I like love, and I don't know if I can think of a lot. That could be a fun one to do later. I got a buddy who's big into like the war stuff, so maybe we'll have him come on and talk about it. But it's cool. And this is another one too, just like something like The Prestige or Inception, where I think the conception and the concept is equal to the execution. So I really enjoyed this one, and I think a lot of people do too. So those are all his movies until we get Tenet coming out this year, and we'll definitely be doing a review of Tenet when it comes out, because I'm excited to talk about that movie and just think about it in a different way. So we'll end things off here. I'll say I'm not the biggest fan of Christopher Nolan, but out of a lot of directors and creators in Hollywood, I know he has earned my respect as a filmmaker, and he's earned the right to take my money. I will happily pay to see whatever his next creation is, whatever his next vision is, because he, to me, is the definition of an auteur and the definition of a filmmaker. The guy understands what this is. He's willing to push boundaries, willing to try new experimental things, willing to take a concept not normally explored in movies and do something cool with it. So that's how we're going to wrap up this episode of the GeekWave. Thank you guys so much for watching. But before you go, I'm going to just give you a couple little things here that I think you should talk about. These are the recommendations for you guys this week on the GeekWave. Starting off with Booksmart. I love Olivia Wilde. I think you guys will love her too, so you should check out Booksmart. Something worth watching and worth talking about. Then, of course, since we talked about Nolan, let's talk about some of the best Nolan movies. Watch the Dark Knight trilogy again. I know all of you guys have it. I have it on Steelbook. Go watch those again. And then check out Memento, a movie I immensely enjoy. It's my favorite Nolan film, and it shows you in the early careers of this man how he's going to become the next big thing in Hollywood. So definitely check that out. And go watch Inception, because, come on, everyone watches Inception and everybody loves Inception. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you could check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter. And if you have any suggestions for topics you'd like to see me cover on this channel, put it in the comments below and we'll talk about it. So thank you guys again for watching. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.